The sun had just dipped behind the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. The only sound that broke the silence of the evening was the soft neighing of horses and the rhythmic creak of an old windmill. Emily Carter stood by the fence, wiping sweat from her brow after a long day's work. Life on the ranch wasn't easy, but it was peaceful, and that's all she ever wanted. She had inherited the Carter Ranch after her father passed away 2 years ago. Most people in town admired her courage for running the entire ranch alone. But there were others, outsiders, who thought a woman living alone on a big property was an easy target. As twilight deepened, Emily noticed the dogs grow restless. Duke, her oldest German shepherd, stood at attention, ears perked up. Shadow, the younger one, growled lowly, staring into the distance. Emily followed their gaze, and her heart skipped a beat. Far beyond the main gate, faint headlights flickered through the dust on the dirt road leading to her ranch. She frowned. No one ever visited this late. Grabbing her flashlight, she stepped onto the wooden porch, scanning the horizon. The old boards creaked under her boots. Probably just a lost traveler, she muttered, but deep down, something didn't feel right. The dogs started barking louder now, their instincts sharper than ever. Emily's fingers brushed against the old shotgun leaning by the door, a weapon she hadn't touched in months. Within minutes, the sound of an engine roared closer. A rusty pickup truck screeched to a stop right outside her fence. 4 figures jumped out, laughing loudly, their voices echoing across the empty fields. Emily's eyes narrowed. Her peaceful night was about to take a dark turn. The rumble of the truck's engine faded, replaced by drunken laughter that cut through the cool night air. Emily gripped her flashlight tightly, its beam landing on 4 scruffy men stumbling toward her gate. Their clothes were dirty, their eyes glassy, and the stench of alcohol drifted even from a distance. "Evenin', sweetheart," one of them slurred. "Didn't know this ranch had such a pretty guard dog." His friends burst into laughter. Emily didn't move an inch. Her dogs barked ferociously behind her, teeth flashing in the porch light. Duke growled so low it sounded like thunder. Emily's voice was steady, too steady. "You boys lost?" she asked coldly. The tallest man stepped closer, swaggering like he owned the place. "Lost? Nah, we were just drivin' by and saw a light. Thought maybe you'd share a drink." He kicked the gate gently, making it creak open. Emily's eyes didn't leave them for a second. "Turn around. You're not welcome here," she said, resting her hand on the shotgun leaning against the porch post. One of the others snickered. "Oh, come on, sweetheart, don't be like that. We just wanna talk." He took another step forward, and that's when Duke barked so loudly the man flinched. But instead of backing off, the hooligans started circling the fence, like vultures testing their prey. Their boots crunched on dry dirt, their eyes glimmered with arrogance. One muttered under his breath, "What's she gonna do? Call her dogs?" Emily's face remained unreadable, but her mind was racing. She had dealt with trouble before, coyotes, thieves, even a fire once, but this was different. These men weren't desperate, they were looking for trouble. Her flashlight beam caught a glint, a knife hanging from one man's belt. She slowly stepped back onto the porch, her boots echoing against the wood. "Last warning," she said, her voice now sharp as steel. "Get off my land." The leader laughed, spreading his arms mockingly. "And if we don't?" For a brief moment, silence fell over the ranch. The wind stopped. Even the crickets went quiet. Emily looked each man in the eye, then slowly smiled, a calm, fearless smile that made the men hesitate. "You'll find out," she whispered. Then she whistled. Just once, low and clear. The dogs immediately straightened up, ready. The hooligans didn't know it yet, but that whistle was the signal that would change everything. The night air grew thick with tension. The men froze when they heard Emily's sharp whistle echo across the dark fields. For a split second, everything was still, too still. Then, from the shadows near the barn, 2 massive shapes moved swiftly and silently. Duke and Shadow emerged, their fur glistening under the porch light, eyes blazing with fierce loyalty. Their growls rolled through the night like thunder. The hooligans instinctively stepped back. "What the hell?" one of them muttered, stumbling as Duke lowered his head, ready to charge. Emily took a step forward, her shotgun now in her hands, though she didn't need to raise it yet. "You boys made a mistake," she said quietly, her voice cold and controlled. "You're not the first troublemakers who came here thinking I was defenseless." The leader forced a nervous laugh. "Easy there, lady. We don't want no. But before he could finish, Duke barked with such power that the sound echoed through the valley. Shadow circled to the right, cutting off their retreat. The men's arrogance began to crumble. Their cocky smiles faded into uneasy grimaces. Emily could see it, fear slowly sinking in. You ever hear of Fort Laredo K-9 unit? She asked suddenly. The men blinked, confused. That's where I served, Emily continued, her eyes hard. Trained dogs to track fugitives and bring them down. Duke and Shadow aren't pets, they're soldiers. One of the men cursed under his breath. You gotta be kidding me. Emily tilted her head. Do I look like I'm kidding? The silence that followed was broken only by the dog's growls and the soft click of Emily loading a shell into her shotgun. The man nearest to her took a hesitant step back, trying to look brave. We just wanted some fun. Fun, Emily interrupted sharply. You break my fence, threaten me, and call that fun. Shadow snarled and lunged forward, stopping just inches from the man's leg. The hooligan yelped, tripping backward into the dirt. His friends didn't move, they were too stunned to react. Emily's tone softened, but it carried more menace than before. You can still walk away, she said. But if you take one more step toward me or this house. She whistled again, shorter this time, and both dogs stood at attention, ready to strike. The leader glanced at his friends. Let's just go, he muttered. But before they could retreat, headlights appeared in the distance, bright, steady, and getting closer. Emily's lips curved into a knowing smile. Looks like company's coming. The men turned toward the light, shielding their eyes. It wasn't another truck of hooligans. It was a sheriff's cruiser, and it was coming fast. Their night of fun had just turned into a nightmare. The rumble of the approaching engine grew louder, its headlights slicing through the darkness like twin beams of justice. The hooligans turned, panic flashing in their eyes. They weren't expecting anyone else out here, especially not law enforcement. The sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop beside the gate, the red and blue lights spinning across the open ranch, painting the men's terrified faces in flashing color. Dust swirled in the air as the driver's door opened. Out stepped Sheriff Daniels, a tall, broad man in his 50s, with a weathered face and the kind of calm that only comes from years of dealing with trouble. He held his rifle casually, but his eyes were sharp as glass. Evenin', Emily, he said in a deep, steady voice. Got your call. Emily nodded, never taking her eyes off the men. Right on time, Sheriff, she replied. These boys were just about to overstep their welcome. The sheriff looked at the four strangers, their slouched posture, their muddy boots, the fear barely hidden behind forced smirks. Well now, he said slowly, what do we have here? Drunk, armed, and trespassing on private property. That about sum it up. The leader tried to recover his bravado. We ain't done nothing wrong. We just stopped by to harass a woman alone on her ranch. Daniels interrupted sharply. That your idea of a social call? The man's words died in his throat. Shadow barked once, a short, powerful sound that made all four flinch. Emily lowered her shotgun slightly, though her eyes were still like stone. They broke my fence, she said quietly. And they thought I wouldn't fight back. The sheriff chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, boys, he said, sighing, you picked the wrong ranch tonight. He raised his rifle just enough for them to see it clearly. Hands where I can see 'em. The men hesitated, one even took a step forward as if to protest, but Duke growled, lips curling, and that was enough. Slowly, trembling, they raised their hands. Now, Daniels continued, you're gonna walk to your truck real slow, and you're gonna get in. You'll follow me back to town, and we'll have a little chat about vandalism, trespassing, and public intoxication. Sound fair? The leader muttered something under his breath, but one glare from Emily shut him up instantly. As they shuffled toward their truck, Emily whispered something to Duke and Shadow. The dogs didn't move, but their eyes followed every step, like trained soldiers guarding their commander. When the last man climbed into the truck, the sheriff turned to Emily. You all right, ma'am? She smiled faintly. I'm fine, Sheriff. Just another night on the ranch. Daniels nodded. Didn't think I'd need to check on you this soon again. Guess trouble likes finding you. Emily looked out into the darkness, where the truck's taillights flickered in the distance. Let it come, she said softly. It never stays long. The sheriff grinned. That's the Emily Carter one no. He tipped his hat and climbed back into his cruiser, following the hooligans down the dirt road. As the rumble of engines faded, the ranch grew quiet again, Only the soft rustle of wind through the grass and the distant howl of a coyote remained. Emily walked to her porch, patted both dogs on the head, and whispered, "Good job, soldiers." But she didn't go inside just yet. She stood there for a long time, watching the stars. She knew this night wasn't just about scaring off a few drunks, it was a reminder that peace, in her world, was something you had to protect. The sheriff's cruiser idled on the dirt road as the hooligans stood frozen beside their truck. Their earlier swagger was gone, replaced by trembling hands and darting eyes. Emily leaned on her porch railing, the barrel of her shotgun glinting under the porch light, her dogs sitting alert by her boots. Sheriff Daniels gave the men one last warning. "You better move before I find a reason to make this official." The leader, a tall man with a scruffy beard, swallowed hard and whispered, "Let's get the hell out of here." They scrambled into their rusty pickup, tripping over each other, boots kicking up dust. Duke barked once, loud and sharp, sending a jolt of panic through them. The truck roared to life, tires spinning wildly on the dirt as it lurched forward. One of the men shouted, "Go! Go! Go!" as they sped off down the long ranch road, the taillights disappearing into the darkness. Emily didn't move. She stood there, calm and unbothered, as the rumble of the truck faded into nothing but silence and wind. The sheriff stepped closer to the porch, his rifle now resting on his shoulder. "I don't think they'll be bothering you again." Emily smirked faintly. "If they're smart, they won't even drive through this county again." Daniels chuckled. "Word'll get around. Folks'll be talkin' by morning about the woman who turned a bunch of drunk troublemakers into scared little boys." Emily smiled slightly but didn't answer. She crouched beside her dogs, giving each a firm pat. "Good boys," she whispered. Duke wagged his tail once, while Shadow rested his head against her knee. The sheriff turned to leave but stopped halfway to his cruiser. "You ever think about comin' back to the force? We could use someone with your guts and training." Emily looked out over the dark fields, the moonlight glinting off the barbed wire fences. "I had my time," she said softly. "Now this ranch is my battlefield." Daniels nodded knowingly. "Well, you sure won this one." As he drove away, the flashing lights faded into the horizon. The ranch was quiet again, but not empty. The night air was filled with life, the rustling of grass, the distant call of an owl, the soft breathing of her loyal dogs. Emily leaned against the porch post, her gaze steady on the stars above. She knew rumors would spread, they always did. By morning, the story would travel through every corner of town.